And I often notice that once we relax about it and it doesn't become such a chore, that when we don't have such a hold, the body gets pregnant a lot faster.
Welcome to Get Pregnant Naturally, where functional medicine and natural fertility solutions will help you get pregnant and have your baby.
Hey everyone, I'm Sarah Clark, and my mission is to inspire, motivate, and empower you. But most of all, I want you to wake up. So with functional medicine, we can discover what causes infertility and eventually reverse the condition. Today, I'm welcoming Allison Post to the podcast, and we're digging into how the breath can improve fertility. Allison Post is an integrative medicine health coach and somatic educator. In a career spanning 4 decades, she has taught courses in many modalities of massage, breath and bodywork, and has helped many thousands of adults and children with chronic illness, digestive discomfort, physical challenges. She guides people through the transitions of pregnancy, birth, chronic stress, menopause, aging, grief and loss, and trauma arising from injury, surgery, and personal crisis. Her curiosity has led her to explore many disciplines, and she has pursued education in Asian and Western bodywork, China Tsang, internal organ massage, visceral manipulation, acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, hypnotherapy, dance, somatic psychology, and craniosacral therapy. You can check out our website at allisonpost.com. That's Allison, Allison, post.com. And be sure to make sure you subscribe on iTunes or wherever you're listening to this to make sure you never miss an episode. Hey, Allison, excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So if you could share your story as to how you came to do this work.
I will try to make it brief because it's a little bit of a long story.
It usually is. That's how these things, usually people that come to this work, it's kind of like, wait a minute. It's not usually in the plan.
No, it was definitely not the plan, although part of the plan. Well, first of all, I got set up to be interested in my body from a very young age because I had a head injury. My head went into the side of a washing machine, and I actually had a hole in my head that was stitched up quickly in kind of emergency mode. And years later, after having trouble with hormones and temperature regulation in my body, I found out that I had quite a bit of scar tissue in my hypothalamus, which is where those things get released and regulated. But I was only 5, so I didn't really understand it. And my parents didn't really know. I mean, it was a long time ago. I'm in my 60s, so medicine was quite different then. But I persevered, and I kind of gained weight, and everything was kind of interesting. But I was a very happy child. It didn't affect my brain function, and I moved on. And I was in the theater. I was a singer. I loved to dance, so I was very body oriented and fascinated with people's stories that came through their body. So that's really the root of my body stuff, is that I loved bodies. I loved biology, the way the body worked. I loved movement, but I also loved studying through character development why people moved their bodies the way they moved, because you're using your body to create a different character. And my plan, as you say, was to be in theater, which I stayed in until about my late 20s. But then at 19, I had an intrauterine device put in to make sure that I wouldn't get pregnant before I was ready to have children. And it was a Dalcon shield, which was an IUD that unfortunately was removed from the market years after I had it. It sadly took the lives of 18 women, and it took fertility rights away from millions of women because it was faulty. Some of us had very serious circumstances as a result. I was in the hospital for 5 weeks, hooked up to IV antibiotics because I almost died. My temperature pushed almost to 105, and it created an incredible, enormous amount of scar tissue in my pelvis. And I didn't know the extent of it until 3 or 4 years later. I got married, and they told me I would never get pregnant, but I got pregnant. And I had an ectopic pregnancy, and they were able to then uncover what was actually happening inside my pelvis, which was an enormous amount of scar tissue on my bowels and everywhere they could see. So they told me, they saved my life. Grateful always for Western medicine for what they're able to do on so many levels. But they didn't really have a way for me to move forward. They just kind of looked at me compassionately and said, wow, you probably have more surgeries and it's going to be tough for you. And at 19 years old and then at 23 years old, I just couldn't sit with that. So at 19, I started studying yoga. And I brought my breath and tried to be comfortable because I was extremely uncomfortable and I couldn't move. And sometimes my walking even was challenging because of the scar tissue. But year after year after year, I just started studying bodywork. I went to school for psychology, for acupuncture, for herbs. I just built kind of this toolkit for myself. And it worked so well to empower me and to change my very body. My scar tissue never went away, but between the breath and the movement and what I knew was emerged between my body and my mind, I thrived more and more, decade after decade. And I knew I had to empower other people to do it because I saw and heard through my female friends and through male friends that there were body problems, and people were not able, they were taking drugs or they were giving their power over to a protocol or a system instead of feeling into themselves. And I found that the treasure was to be with yourself and to know yourself through your breath and through your own system. And I just have been doing it for over 30 years and I love it. And I love seeing people happy and thriving when they think maybe that's not a possibility for them. So that is my story.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's quite a journey you're on, and be able to get this toolkit together to help yourself heal and then ultimately helping others as well.
Yeah, I think that's what we do, I think some of the best therapists are the people that have been through things and have worked themselves through, because that's where the real, the empathy, sympathy is one thing, but empathy and really understanding where people are coming from are another. So I love when I meet healing artists and therapists that have really moved through their own work.
I agree.
So,
Walking the talk.
thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. So today we're going to focus on the breath, which you touched on there during when you're sharing your journey. So can you explain why the breath? I think a lot of people, may know that that we should be holding our breath and that we should be that breathing is helpful. But why is it helpful for fertility and hormones specifically?
Well, your body really needs oxygen to thrive and survive. And oxygen hydrates your tissues. Oxygen and the breath, number one, set up a situation in your nervous system and in the way the oxygen is getting to the places it needs to hydrate for your hormones to move and communicate. You can't communicate if the system is on freeze frame or if you're not getting enough oxygen. Many, many people breathe just enough to keep going, but their body's not really working. It's not, they're in fight or flight, or they're hypervigilant, or they're shut down, so that the communication systems, the enzymatic actions, even the lower portions of the lungs don't get enough oxygen. So then there's not enough exchange in the system. And so our hormone system can't really help us, we don't even create the proper amount of hormones if the nervous system and the oxygen and the tissues and the fluids aren't flowing properly. And we can't honestly receive enough to be in that mode, that oxytocin loving, being able to trust, being able to be comfortable with touch, kissing and cooing and being loved, I believe that creates fertility, and that the hormones really flow when you're relaxed and you're open and you can receive. We need to receive in order to create. So the breath is who you are in the moment. The breath is actually being present with the love and in every moment, oxygenating your body, not holding your breath. And so physiologically, without the body working properly to bring the breath in, it's really hard for your system to create what you need to do much of anything except to just get through without, and then of course situations happen where we create problems in our body because the breath isn't supporting us and feeding and nurturing our system.
A lot of times with the cortisol becomes raised if we're holding our breath. And I think
absolutely.
Talk about that. And we're going to talk about this in a minute about the different breath patterns. But a lot of times we're just doing that shallow breathing, or we feel our whole body constricted, or even I've talked about this on the podcast before about we're walking around with these like trying to keep our bellies in all tight.
Exactly.
It's like let that thing hang out. Be aware of the breath. It's
very challenging for women to the idols that have been put up on magazines, on their TV screens, although it seems to be improving, thank goodness, have set women up to hold in their belly. It's a big deal even when I work on people viscerally, it's so hard for them to let go because they've gotten into the pattern of holding. Their body doesn't even know how to let go. Even with little children who have had traumatic experiences, and we were all little children once. Whenever I mention children, it's not separate from women trying to get pregnant, because you are your child and you have developed out of that in utero experience, out of the birth experience, and out of development. And if there's something that happened to us at a young stage and we've held our breath, which I've seen over and over again with kids who can't poop, or kids who can't think as well, it's a lot of times their diaphragm is right up into their rib cage and not really haven't formed to the best that, and they're not using it. So they're breathing the wrong way. The breath is going up into their chest instead of opening into their rib cage. And then breath patterns develop from there, and the whole body structure, the bones, the way the fluids exchange, the way we hold ourselves, and then the body image that we have, that really starts to inform us of how we breathe, and we become that. Our breath is who we are. So I think a lot of what happens is that even sometimes if I go into a second grade classroom and I say, I'm going to teach you how to breathe, the children, I say, I know that's funny, and you might know how to breathe. And most of them will raise their hand and say, I hold my breath, or I have asthma, or, there's always an understanding that, wow, I could do that better. And I think for all of us adults, whether we're trying to get pregnant or not, we're setting up the best possible way to be for ourselves so that we're receptive, so that we respond instead of react, so that our cortisol levels do what we want them to do, which is gently rise and fall during the day until they fall at night and we can sleep. The breath kind of establishes those patterns, our body image, the way everybody is communicating in our body.
Yeah, it's even this calming thing, because I find myself, holding in my belly or being constricted when I'm by myself driving. I'm like, well, why am I holding my belly when I'm by myself?
Oh my God, totally. Everybody, I am a breath woman, and I find myself, for instance, before I'm on a podcast, or before somebody's interviewing me, or I'm in a live event, that's when I say, wow, I better sit down and really be with my breath, because you get nervous. This is life. Life actually introduces situations that are challenging. I don't care, and they're not necessarily traumatic, right? But still, once your breath speeds up or is held, or your heartbeat starts to go fast, your system says, oh, this might be an emergency, even if it's not. And if we have a practice where we can, like when you're in the car, where you can go, oh, I need to take a deep breath here. It takes like 10 seconds to get back into your body and into a calmer breath when it's appropriate for you. Right? There are so many places that we breathe differently. We're not walking around like zombies, breathing in a relaxed way. That's not being human. We're exercising, we're joyful, or we need to be set up for an emergency. But how can we establish something where, like you're saying, oh, I'm in the car and I notice I'm holding my breath? Well, you notice it because you have a place and a relationship with the breath. We need to establish that relationship, I think, and it's very helpful.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the different breath patterns so we can be aware. As I say, the first step is awareness. So what are some breath patterns that we can look for?
I don't know if I'm really clear about what you mean about breath patterns. Do you mean literally how we're inhaling and exhaling, and then how that sets up our body?
Or is it more, where are we holding it in our body? Is it the shallow? Is it I guess different types of breath that we may just be unconsciously doing on a daily basis?
I think that, I don't think there's a textbook on it. I think everybody is so individual, but there's some overarching philosophies here, in that when you are full of anxiety, which is it's very prevalent now. We have a very ramped up culture, and everybody's on the move, and they're constantly doing too much. So that ramped up breath is a holding of the breath. And like with those little kids who get traumatized, the diaphragm starts to kind of creep up into the sides of the rib cage, and the rib cage kind of closes in so that you're not using the full expansion of the breath. And your large intestine actually is connected to your diaphragm in those flexures, in the sides of the rib cage, so that if you're not breathing well, there's the digestive piece, the peristalsis, that mechanism that creates those beautiful waves for you to have good bowel movements, are also stuck up. So there's this unknowing that you're not aware of, that your rib cage is really tight, that your throat is tight, that your shoulders are up to your ears, and that your heartbeat is always a little fast, and you're a little worried. Am I going to get there on time? Is this really going to work? Like, that the mind speeds up too and doesn't trust what the body's supposed to be doing for you. And it goes into all sorts of, again, the hormones being created and everybody traveling through the body that needs to communicate, the organs, the very fascia and tissue and bones go out of alignment because you can't hold and be free in your movement. So that's kind of the hypervigilant, even if it's not completely in shock, or shut down. I think 90% of the people that come through my door are walking around like that. And they become aware of it because they start to slow down, even though sometimes just the slowing down is scary. It's like, I'm supposed to stay up here. I have too many things to do. I can't drop the ball. And we can learn that the pattern of breath that will support you doesn't mean that you're not aware or that you're not engaged. You can actually engage more because your nervous system allows you to be very clear and astute because you're breathing and because you're in the moment and you can actually engage in the moment, not reactively, but you can respond to and be creative. That's where creativity comes from. So the hypervigilant pattern, I think, is the most profound nowadays, but there are also patterns where people have become completely disassociated. They've shut down and the body's more slack. There's not a lot of life in the body. But when you start to go underneath and really listen, there's no movement because the body has almost left. It's checked out. It couldn't be there for whatever it was happening, or there's just too much going on. And so the breath is really shallow. And nothing, there's no movement in the system. And once we bring the breath there again, and we create a safe space for that, which I want to underline, everybody needs a safe space to bring their breath, especially if it's from trauma or hypervigilance or shutdown, that these patterns have been created. The shutdown patterns, the body just doesn't work, nothing's happening. And sometimes then the gut doesn't come online, and the gut gets leaky, and then there's autoimmune problems. I mean, the patterns, if they're not dealt with, and if the breath isn't welcomed and relearned, so many things just kind of domino effect. And we get more and more patterns, because I really want to point out the patterns shift according to your life. So every day you change. That's your birthright. You grow, heal, and change every day of your life. And so you can change the breath and you can change whatever's going on in there. But if it doesn't change, it might actually get more shut down or more hypervigilant. And then that's not the kind of change we're looking for.
So the hypervigilant on one side and the other side, almost like a complete burnout shutdown. So the person, how would you, with the hypervigilant one, you can maybe see you're sort of tense and shoulders up and holding the breath, whereas the shutdown one is maybe just like, is it like no emotion or like flat, or what would you?
There's definitely often a flat line, although some people who get shut down are incredibly, they want to be there and they try. You can see the effort, but literally even on the facial muscles, they get slack, the eyes get cloudy, and they are often complaining of brain fog or not being able to get out of bed. There's just not a lot of movement. And of course, I am putting my hands on and I am feeling into. So however you're with the person who's in shutdown, you can tell there's not a lot of vitality going on there, or there's a stagnation. Or yes, even the voice sounds a little flat because, it's an effort to talk. So every part of us that's expressive is affected. Just like when we're hypervigilant and we're talking really fast, the rhythms of the body change. Sometimes you can't even feel the rhythm of the shutdown or the flat line. But then underneath, especially at night, that person or the person lying next to them feels this nervous energy and tension, because there is underlying tension that's holding those patterns there.
Yeah, for me, it goes in the shoulders, and I can feel like all of a sudden, I'm like, why is my whole body clenching? And then, Bristol, bringing an awareness to that. Then I find if I just say, I was just doing some meditation before we got on here, and I was on a foam roller, like lying on this thing, and I'm like, oh, like release more. And I'm like, I still felt myself like kind of being tense. I'm like, release. And then as you keep saying release, like keep letting it go. You're like, oh, now I can kind of, because I think sometimes it's just so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's why it's really important to be in relationship, especially in the topic that we're discussing with fertility. Mm-hmm. Relationship counts. This is why we're here. This is why we want babies. This is why we have partners that are creating homes with us. And, I've been with my partner for 34 years. And we support each other through our voice, through our moods, through our touch, especially when we're worried or there's, it's like, first of all, you need to be listened to and somebody needs to know what's going on, because a lot of times we just kind of hide it and we're not going to tell anybody. We try to make it on our own. And I think it's great that we establish things that you're talking about, laying on a foam roller, finding those times when we can stop, even in the car, at a red light, taking a deep breath. We put all these wonderful tools in our day, but ultimately we need to be met. We need to be held. A lot of the hypervigilance and a lot of the shutdown is due to us not having those kind of relationships that we need. Or being in a relationship that maybe is a little out of sync and we're worried to even talk about it. So it's the communication, the touch, the love, the support, or even getting somebody's voice that you love leading you through every day for 5 or 10 minutes, so that you can create a sanctity place. You're, oh, here I am with that voice. I've done that myself, actually. I'm a singer, so the voice is a big thing to me. And whenever I can't relax, which happens to every human, I have a person who was one of my teachers, and I put on one of his meditations, and it's like, yeah, I get grounded. There's an anchor. And we need those anchors. A foam roller is a great anchor because it's anchoring your tissues, so you have something to work with. So whether it's another person or a tool like that, it's a great thing. And if you're trying to get pregnant, you really do need as much relaxation as you can get. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. In the beginning, I was just coaching women and then changed it to coaching couples because it was missing the whole other spectrum of this journey, and sort of and a lot of times people may not even have spoken about some of the things that they're dealing with on this journey and how it's affected their life, and they're able to give voice to it in front of the other person. And it's just it creates a conversation. It's just a very healing environment to be able to then really go on this journey together, even though men and women may handle it quite differently. It's not to say that each person is equally hurting. So it's very
I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's wonderful that you're doing that work, though, bringing it as couples, because it's not about, whether it's a woman partnership, a woman-man, no matter who's trying to have the baby. And it is about relationship. So, bless you for that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, so we do a lot of work, and I think you do as well with gut health. We do stool testing, and we find it's in the majority of people we work with. We find multiple gut infections and parasites and pathogens, and so we do a low and slow approach to help heal that with supplements, and then bringing in the whole mind body aspect of this too. So how does the breath and the breath work help with digestion and the health of the gut?
I love your expression, low and slow. My 2 favorite words in the English language, besides love, is gentle and slow. Yeah, we need to be gentle because, first of all, again, the breath informs the whole body. And if we're in a cortisol response as a result of anxiety, depression, whatever, and we're not breathing, or we're breathing too quickly, or we never give ourselves enough space, you have a very permeable lining around your gut. And it's meant to be permeable because it needs to bring nutrition after you've assimilated your nutrients. Those nutrients are brought through this very lovely tissue-like, literally, think of a piece of tissue, being able to then bring it to the places of the body that it needs to go. But if there's too much stress and there's too much cortisol, that tissue becomes ultra permeable, or the cell junctions that make up that tissue start to separate, and there's almost like holes in it. It's like having a strainer or a piece of cheesecloth that get these little holes, and whatever you're straining pieces come through it.
Mm-hmm.
And then your system gets an inappropriate response because there's a foreigner in the body or in the blood. And we go into different kinds of problems. And the pathogens and the overgrowth of bacteria create this situation, but we also, through stress, create an overpermeable gut so that our immune system isn't working quite as well as we'd like it to work. And we get the overgrowth or the pathogens. So the breath slows down the body, brings you into a more reparative mode so that the stress will not affect that beautiful piece of tissue, and we can start healing it. You know, we can do exercises. It's not only the herbs. You know, you're not going to metabolize all that stuff in your organ systems if you can't have your nervous system set up properly. If the cortisol doesn't drop a little bit, and isn't in its proper channel, because the cortisol has a tendency to start stealing from the hormones and start stealing, like, I need more, I need more, I need more. The breath brings us more into balance, rhythmic balance, hormonal balance. And that gives us more of a healing potential. So we start healing our digestion that way.
Can you give us an example? I think I saw something on your website there where you help with children. I'm not sure if there's anything else you can say around the gut health or around that you've helped. Kind of, what would your practice look like for that situation? Or is it more of a holistic doing it all?
Do you mean with the child? Is that?
Yeah, I think you had something on your website about a child that you helped.
The embryo,
with.
yeah. That's actually what really changed a lot of my practice, was that experience. I worked with a little boy who was 2.5 years old, and his mother had been my client for a long time, and I had met him when he was just a little baby. And she called me and said, you know, I've taken him to this Waldorf school and they won't take him. They say he's not making eye contact with other children. They think it might be on the autistic spectrum or ADD. They're not sure. And I'm just really upset. And I said, you know, I don't know if I can help you, but please bring him. And he came into my office and he didn't make eye contact. And when I tried to kind of engage him, like, you know, your mom brought you here, and I thought maybe we could have some fun up on my table. Would you like to come up on my table? And he just said, no. I mean, no matter how I approached him and kind of tried to see if we could work together, it was no. And it was a stiff no and a firm no. Like, I'm not coming near you. And unusual for me, even with children. And I said, okay, you know what? You can do anything you want in this room. So we set up a safe space. I said, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on your mom. I'm going to have her up on the table, because you know what? Your mommy loves being on my table. And I invited her up on the table, and I kind of looked at him, and he got curious because his mom was on the table and he feels safe with her. And I said, well, I wonder if you want to be my assistant. I could use a doctor assistant. Would you like to be an assistant doctor? And he got so excited. And he said, yes. I said, okay, but I'm going to ask you if I can put you on top of your mom. You can be on top of her, laying on her. And I'm going to make a mommy sandwich. I'm just going to put one hand underneath your mommy and one hand on top of you, and we're going to make a sandwich. And oh my God, that will help your mommy so much. And there was no question. He was like, ready, I'm there. And I put him on top of her. I didn't know what was going to happen, honestly. I was kind of flying by the seat of my pants, just trying to get him involved, which is what very often you do with children. And I put one hand underneath her sacrum and one hand on top of his sacrum. And I took a deep breath and I just listened and I waited, which is what I do a lot of. I'm patient and I'm noticing what his body feels like, what her body feels like, what they feel like, are they merging, but mostly noticing that his body was, his spine and everything was really stiff, and I couldn't feel his cerebral spinal flow. And and he just laid there. And he had his head was kind of crooked into her shoulder, so he was just really resting. And within about 2 minutes, he started to writhe on top of her. But he didn't bother him. His spine started to kind of undulate. His legs would shake a little. His arms would shake a little. It was like a dance. Some of it was a little jerky. Some of it was fluid. And it literally went on for about 7 minutes. It was amazing. And she was just holding him. Her eyes were closed. His eyes were closed. And I just followed it. I breathed. I followed the patterns that were happening in his body, and I noticed when they started to slow down, and then all of a sudden he just dropped on his mom, and there was just stillness, but it was as if really there were waves at the ocean. I mean, it was like the whole room opened up. Everything was calm and quiet. And he took a deep breath, he lifted his head, and he looked in his mother's eyes. And she looked at him and she started to cry. It was an amazing moment. And what I found out was that he had had a seizure disorder when he was born. And they had taken him away from her immediately. They never had that moment, that bonding moment. And we had created a field for that to happen. I didn't have a protocol for it. I knew that he had a seizure disorder. I had his history, but I didn't go after it. I just allowed his pace and what he might need to feel safe to occur, so we could kind of get to the root of the problem, which I wasn't quite sure what that was. And then he came back 3 or 4 times, especially for the piece of fruit that I offered him at the end of the session. He was very excited. There was always a different piece of fruit. And he would come back and we would do the same thing, go back on top of his mom. And it was a little less every time that he didn't have to look at her again. He would just unwind and kind of cuddle with her. And she loved it. I mean, we could have done this for a long time because it was so delicious. And about the 4th or 5th time he came in, I said, "Are you ready? Should we work with your mom today?" And he said, "Just me." And I mean, this is a 2.5-year-old kid, right? I said, "What, just you? You mean just you on the table?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, then." And he got up on the table and I held him in a few different places. He breathed. I could feel the whole flow of his system. And he told me when he was done, "Okay, thank you." He knew exactly what he needed. And I looked at his mom and I said, "I think we've done the deed, but we do have one more piece of fruit. So let me know what happens." Now, this was about 15 years ago. And right after that happened, I'd say she called me maybe 4 to 6 weeks later and said, "Oh my God, the occupational therapist doesn't know who he is. He's like completely different, and he's looking at her, and he's flirting with little girls at school now." Because he got accepted to the Waldorf school because there was just something missing there in the breath, in the patterns, in the safety. And he is now a thriving young man who loves the theater and loves to be, So that was the beginning of me really not only working with children, but working for mommies to come in with their babies because they didn't know why their baby was crying all night or what was really going on. And I never advertised this. It's not, that I don't mention it because it's usually my clients' children. And they bring them in and I calm the mother down first because it's the mom that's setting the field for the child. So here we are again, relationship counts. And a lot of us didn't get that when we were children. and we have to reestablish it. So that will reestablish the patterns. And we don't have to be laying on top of our mommy at 40, 50, 60, 70, or 80 in order to establish those patterns. We need a safe space, and we need somebody to listen. And then there we are.
Yeah, that was a powerful story. It brought tears to my eyes when you were sharing it. Thank you.
Yeah, it always brings tears to my eyes. So it's,
Yeah.
I have to say, and there have been so many children and adults that have had that kind of experience, the aha, oh my God, here I am in my body. It's just a beautiful thing.
So let's talk about the connection with breathing and sleep dysregulation. How is that? What's the connection there?
So we're going back to the cortisol, right? So your cortisol has these beautiful patterns where, you wake up in the morning and you're pretty high, hopefully. You're not exhausted because you've slept during the night and you have enough juice to start your day. And as you start moving around and doing, of course, the cortisol starts to drop a little bit and you eat so that you can raise the cortisol again. So you eat lunch, you have a snack, you eat dinner, just to keep these nice levels. But throughout the day, it's getting lower and lower until before you go to sleep, it's like, okay, it's sleepy time. So the breath, again, is informing your nervous system. It's also informing the way you eat, what you do, and what you choose. If you're eating in your car or you're not making time for yourself to have a life because you're racing from place to place, that cortisol is burning at both ends. The breath is speeded up. And by the time you get to bed at night, you're exhausted. You can't sleep. You're overtired, but you're still, anxious. And your breath is not slowed down. 90% of the world is on some kind of a tablet or device at night, which is not a good idea. I recommend you get off of that at least an hour before you go to sleep. Mm-hmm. A lot of people eat dinner and get into bed, or they're snacking a lot at night. Again, this is not going to really regulate you because your liver needs to kind of get all your blood and regenerate your system at night. It doesn't need to be on digestive mode of food. We're not digesting food at night. We're just repairing and resting. So the breath informs you every moment of every day. And at night, if you can get into bed an hour before and kind of feel your breath, feel what's going on, and if it's speeded up, either put on a tape or hold your partner's hand and do something together to regulate the breath so that you can regulate your body and fall into sleep. Because without the sleep, you're not actually being able to nourish your body.
Yes, it's the foundation of everything. We work with our couples for months on sleep hygiene and really sometimes backing their whole entire day up to then help them prepare for sleep.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And it's a sacred time. I mean, it's that quiet time, yin time in Chinese medicine, where everything is receptive. We're receiving and we're trying to work out what our day was in different stages of the night. We want to have all of those stages. I recommend too that if people are caffeine drinkers, that they never drink caffeine in the afternoon. I'm not an anti-caffeine person, depending on the individual. But not too much of it. Everything has a moderate approach, but also if you start, getting a 4:00 hit, it's really going to affect your sleep. And that is physiological and chemical. This is science. It's not because we have opinions. There are different chemicals that are too alive in your body at night if you've had caffeine. So we're looking at a lot of things, the type of food that's right for your own body. It's always a whole 4-leaf clover. There are there are parts to this. There are branches of things that we have to do to support ourselves and support our breath. in order to sleep. But I have to say that sleep is like the number one delicious, amazing, supportive part of our life. That's also ours, right? If you're sleeping next to somebody who has sleep apnea and who wakes you up all the time, you love them, but you need to go sleep in another room until they get that figured out and you can have an easeful sleep. It's really, really important that you set yourself up for your sleep.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the caffeine piece, sometimes we don't know how caffeine actually impacts us, and there's genetic SNPs that we can have. Some people, as we process, each person will process caffeine differently. And for me,
Exactly.
on the weekend, I usually get a decaf on the weekend, and somehow I end up getting a regular. And I literally 20 minutes later, I'm in a bookstore going, why do I feel insane? Oh wait, and I looked at the thing on the Starbucks. I'm like, oh, it was regular caffeine, and
Oh yeah.
it made me feel. First of all, that it makes me feel like super like planny that I can take on the world. And so I'm like, oh, wait a minute. So it's interesting though, when you don't have as much, when you do have it, to see how it impacts your body. And yeah, definitely having it later in the day, not a good idea.
I'm with you.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely the SNPs, find
Mm-hmm.
out how you metabolize caffeine,
Yeah.
because if you're not a good metabolizer, you're setting yourself up for failure almost. It's like we are who we are. And, genetics 10 to 15%, it's really your environment
Mm-hmm.
that's going to take care of you, but you still are, coming from a line. And you do want to take a look at that. I'm really glad you look at that when you work with people. I think it's really important.
And now if you could lead us through a breathwork exercise, you'd like to
Sure.
have us try.
Well, whoever you are and wherever you are, and Sarah, find a comfortable place to be in. If you're on your computer listening or on your phone, maybe there's a place you can lay down. I am a lover of laying down, even during meditation. And if I fall asleep, it's what I needed, but mostly I stay awake. But, sitting can create postural stuff. So if you just lay down or even stand up, you have flow in your body. So just comfortable, well ventilated, and just notice what your body feels like right now, from head to toe, from side to side, from front to back, your whole body. Just notice if you can feel your whole body. And take a couple of breaths, just natural breaths. Feel your breath. You might notice it's coming in through your nose. Unless you're a mouth breather, it's coming in through your mouth. Where is it going? Really, what's your breath doing in this moment? And also just notice that you have space around you so that you can feel yourself as a whole body. You don't have to kind of close in or overreach to feel yourself. You have space. So you have space to feel yourself, to feel your skin, to feel your whole body, and then to notice where your breath lives in your body. Is it in your chest, in your throat? Is it in your pelvis? Where is it? And give yourself just a couple more minutes to relax your shoulders, to relax your spine, relax your arms and your legs, and even relax the muscles around your jaw, your eyes, your whole face, and your skull. And just breathe. Use your breath, meet your breath with those muscles, with the relaxation of the shoulders, with the back. If you're sitting in your seat, down to your feet. If you're laying down, just feel yourself gently dropping into the surface you're lying on. You don't have to hold anything up. And then just allow yourself, if you can, if it's comfortable, to breathe in through your nose. Feel the breath moving down your throat and down your chest, down into your rib cage. And you might notice that your belly can expand a little bit. It might not, but we want to encourage it and invite it. We want to invite the diaphragm, your breathing muscle, to move down into the rib cage and expand laterally so that you can get more air into your lungs. So it's this downward movement, just breathing in slowly, as slowly as you can, and you can feel the breath coming down. Down the chest, down into the belly so that the belly expands when you breathe in and releases and relaxes when you breathe out. And there's no rush to breathe in again. You can just establish a pattern of breathing that could be comfortable for you. Breathing in gently and slowly through your nose, down into your belly, so that you might even want to put your hands on your belly and notice if the belly rises a little bit on the inhale. And maybe open your throat, open your mouth. Maybe even a little sigh on the exhale, so that you just let all the air out and you can maybe sink down a little bit more. Sink down into your seat, sink down into the surface you're lying on. And remember, you have plenty of space around you. You are a whole body breathing. And just continue to breathe in through your nose. Feel the expansion of your belly, maybe not only forward into your hands, but maybe into the sides of your rib cage. Maybe we can expand the lateral space so we have more and more places to bring our breath. And if you can't do that, just become aware of that. That might be something to work on later. Breathing brings awareness. So just be who you are in your breath right now. Continue to allow the belly to rise and expand on your inhale. And soften and release on your exhale. So just notice maybe the difference in the very short time we've had for this, what you felt like at the beginning and what you might feel like now in your breath. Is your breath in the same place it was? Are you aware of anything in your nervous system, in your muscles, in your throat, in your chest? It's all good because it's bringing awareness to having a relationship with your breath. There's no goal here except to expand and be in your breath and be with your breath. Just take a couple more rounds of breath, expanding and releasing your breath. And if you've closed your eyes during this exercise, you might want to gently open them so you just let the light in. Maybe circle your shoulders and your wrists and your ankles and kind of come back into a little bit of a different awareness. And notice your breath now. Okay.
Awesome. That was beautiful. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, I liked the image for me of breathing to the sides. It's interesting. Just give a different perspective on. I can feel the belly to the side. I like that.
Yeah, well, we are three-dimensional, and our diaphragm, our breathing muscle, works three-dimensionally. So you're actually moving your diaphragm down, and it's attached to your rib cage. So it's expanding laterally in the intercostal muscles in order for it, it to be created to the lungs to fill up with oxygen. So this pressure, actually, not really breath, but there's this pressure system moving it down, and the belly expands, the sides and the back actually expand. It's three-dimensional, and then the lungs and the chest fill up. So every part of your body is breathing.
I love it. Awesome. Thank you. So is there anything you're obsessed with right now, be it a book, a website, an app, a documentary, anything you'd like to recommend?
Wow, I'm just obsessed on a daily basis with so many different things. Appropriate to fertility, I would say, again, to bring it back to the somatics of things, that it's really important to have an understanding if you are stuck. There's a wonderful book that's quite old called Waking the Tiger, Healing Trauma by Peter Levine. And he has a website, and he teaches body workers, and he teaches psychologists how to work with people who are stuck. And it merges the body mind, informs the whole being. So if you are stuck, I think it's a good place to go. But wow, I mean, I listen to so many different podcasts and read so many different books. I can't even think of anything now. I'm working with a wonderful woman at a bookstore coming up in the Bay Area. Her name is Marcella Friel, and she has a new book called Tap, Taste, Heal. She's a natural food chef, and she works with women with body image. And we're doing kind of a gut health, body health. We're merging. And so we give people more tools. She does the emotional freedom technique. So that might be something. It's a brand new book to look into. And she's a lovely, wonderful body image coach.
Nice. That's
yeah.
Marcella
Friel. Is that Marcella, Marcella, Friel, Friel. She has a website as well. It's lovely. And I also welcome you to go to my website. I actually have an online program that could be very helpful. You can join it at any time, and it has videos, audios, and PDFs, worksheets, so that you can learn about your breath. You can watch how breath can happen in a body, my body, and be led through many different, there are many different techniques to have three-dimensional breathing. And also to have techniques that you can touch into yourself, in your belly, and relax the tissues, understand where the organs are, and really nourish and feed the tissues to hydrate and to make things run better. Right now, I do a Saturday live class with it. There are bonuses, lots of ways that I work with you as a group. So it's called the Gut Wellness Course. It goes with my book, The Gut Wellness Guide, and I think it's really helpful. The feedback's been beautiful, so I would say that's a good resource.
Absolutely. Okay, so we'll link to that, to the Gut Wellness Guide, and then you also have free download where you have podcasts and videos, and the listeners go to Allison at 2alspost.com/events, and what can they expect there?
There are lots of, first of all, there's a little part of my book that my publisher put on the events page, but there are a lot of podcasts and one interview that I didn't know was going to be visual on YouTube. I thought it was also a podcast with Dr. Steve Gundry.
Okay.
But Chris Kresser interviewed me, and of course, the 15-minute Matrix with Andrea, which is one of my favorites. And so there are lots of different ways to listen and learn through those podcasts. And now yours will go on. And there's also quite a while ago, I was interviewed on Zoom video by a woman named Rachel Yellen. I don't know if you know her. She's a doula and a hypnobirther. And she talks about setting yourself up for pregnancy. Her website is called Yes to Birth. And she did a whole series of the Yes to Birth experience and interviewed 30 of us about how to best get ready for pregnancy, go through pregnancy and after birth. And I was interviewed on that. That interview is also on the events page, and that could be very helpful for your listeners.
Awesome. So they should go to AllisonPost.com/events. Event. Awesome. Yeah. Is there a success story you'd like to share if it's relative to fertility or pregnancy?
There's so many of them, but what I will say is, first of all, in a general, when people come to me, they're often coming very worried that they're not going to get pregnant, or they're on a schedule because they're pushing 40, or just because they want to get pregnant as soon as possible and they really want a baby. And they set themselves up with the basal thermometer, and they call their husband or their partner, or they're going to their fertility center they're scheduled. And so they're in their mind about what they want for their body. And I often notice that once we relax about it and it doesn't become such a chore, it's something that we just look forward to, and it happens when it happens. Even though ovulation, we have a few days there. When we don't have such a hold, the body gets pregnant a lot faster. Sometimes women actually, after 2 or 3 years, sometimes don't get pregnant, and then they adopt. I have seen this many times, and they adopt and then they get pregnant. So I really want to say that a lot of the success stories are the breath, the relaxation, the ease, that it's not a race, and that we just, put it out to the universe and to nature to support us in our needs. But I have also, for instance, worked with a woman who was a medical practitioner, a doctor, who was told she couldn't get pregnant. And she was in her late 30s, and they had done all the tests, and they just told her point blank, yeah, you should adopt. And she came to see me and asked me, and I said, I'm not a psychic, I'm not a medical professional. I can tell you that your body is a vital body. And perhaps if you do some breathing exercises, and she was drinking soda every day, there was a lot of sugar in her diet. We kind of worked with tools that might support her body to nourish her better. And she did get pregnant, and she has a 3-year-old child now. Not because of me, because she engaged in a different way. And maybe sometimes the tests show one thing and there's something else going on there. So there are a lot of success stories, and I think people should just open themselves to their own success story, right?
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on today, sharing your words of wisdom. I love the breathwork exercise you took us on. So definitely, if you need to rewind this a little bit and listen to that again, I would encourage that in the morning or before bed. And thanks again so much, Allison, for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Get Pregnant Naturally. Seriously, it means the world to me that you're here. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can be notified of upcoming episodes. I'm excited to offer you a special gift. If you're a U.S. resident, text FERTIL to 345-345. You'll be prompted to enter your email address, and you'll receive our fertility yoga download. In this 20-minute intro video, we focus on a calming and peaceful practice to connect back to your heart. These simple fertility yoga poses can help quiet negative thoughts and make you feel more in control. Download it now and get started today. So for US residents, text FERTILE, FERTILE, to 345-345. For non-US residents, go to www.yogafreebie.com to access your special gift. That's www.yogafreebie.com to access the free fertility yoga download. And I love this quote by Dr. Mark Hyman, Medical Director of the Cleveland Clinic Center for Functional Medicine and Chairman of the Institute for Functional Medicine. Functional medicine is medicine by cause, not by symptom. Functional medicine practitioners don't in fact treat disease. We treat your body's ecosystem. We get rid of the bad stuff, put in the good stuff, and because your body is an intelligent system, it does the rest. Thanks for listening. Until next time.